Hello everyone, this is Shadow. Due to copyright restrictions on YouTube, I can't publish many of the audiobooks you love. That's why I've created a special paid service where you can enjoy over 300 high-quality audiobooks from platforms like Webnovel, Pocket FM, Audible, Wuxia, and more. Each novel comes as a one-time purchase, no subscriptions, no hidden fees. After payment, you'll receive full access via Telegram, along with all future updates for that novel. You'll find a wide selection of your favorite genres and titles, always in premium audio quality. Check the full list of available novels in the description. DM me now to get your favorite stories in audiobook form and start listening today. Also, you can request any novel so I can turn into audiobooks. Check out our Patreon for more details.
81. The Sorting Ceremony, Azkaban. Hearing Charles' words, the expressions of the few young wizards nearby became quite strange. The Black Lake in their view was bottomless, as if countless monsters were hidden within. On the train to Hogwarts, they had heard some older students excitedly talk about many rumors about Hogwarts. The Black Lake's appearance frequency in these rumors was consistently high. Now Charles actually said the Black Lake was like a big hot pot. How greedy must he be? Ron couldn't help but let out a chuckle, looking at Harry Potter and Hermione, his expression clearly conveying a message. This is the most talented and outstanding student from the Muggle world you were talking about. Doesn't look very smart. Hermione, with a hint of worry, advised Charles. I heard that some mountains and lakes in the magical world have special magic, and the Black Lake at Hogwarts is one of them. When you gaze into the abyss also gazes into you. Charles, maybe don't look at the Black Lake for too long. Charles just smiled at this, looking in the direction of the Black Lake, licking his lips, and said faintly, "It's okay. After all, is there a possibility that I am the abyss?" As he said this, Charles couldn't help but lightly tap his wand a few times. Streaks of time and space markers burst from the tip of the wand, instantly appearing beneath the Black Lake, landing on the aquatic magical creatures. This one looks tender and suitable for steaming. This big octopus is great, just slice it raw for sashimi. This big fish is a bit old, stew it in soy sauce and make do. As Charles muttered to himself, Hermione and Harry Potter were bewildered, completely unaware of what Charles was doing. Ron, on the other hand, showed an expression of seeing through everything, and a guess had already formed in his mind. Just putting on airs. It seems this Charles Evans has discovered he has no talent in magic, but he can't let go of his reputation and face among Muggle students, so he's pretending to be profound here. Look, he's waving his wand and nothing is happening, isn't that just like me? Thinking of this, the frustration from failing to use magic on the Hogwarts Express earlier and being laughed at by Hermione vanished in an instant, turning into a sense of superiority from seeing through the truth. Ron couldn't help but look forward to a good show. After school starts, maybe this Muggle genius won't perform as well as me. At this moment, Hagrid's shout came from not far away, telling the young wizards to board the wooden boats to cross the Black Lake. Hermione still wanted Charles to take a boat with them, but Charles directly refused. Are you kidding me? Just being pestered by Hermione and the others for this short while, their chattering was almost driving Charles crazy. He could confirm again that he didn't like children at all. Whether it was the Savior Trio or any other children, even if you were incredibly popular in the original work, or some stunningly beautiful Hogwarts school belle, sorry, right now you're just a childish little brat, stay away. Charles walked to the shore of the Black Lake alone, directly turning a floating piece of wood into a wooden boat, easily and leisurely crossing the Black Lake. Meanwhile, on another boat, Ron was still talking about Charles, and seemed to be arguing with Hermione. What if he's a genius at a Muggle school? We're at Hogwarts. This is a school of magic, is he necessarily great? You all saw it, how silly he looked just now. Also, he waved his wand so many times, what was the effect? Nothing. Ron's face was full of disdain. We just invited him to take a boat with us, and he refused us like we were the plague. Does he think he's amazing? Just putting on airs. Harry is the most amazing, he's the boy who lived, some people say he defeated the mysterious person. Hermione bit back. I know Charles Evans, he's a genius. Maybe even more of a genius than Headmaster Dumbledore. He can learn things in a short time that others need years to learn. Ron, you haven't seen Charles' performance, you can't understand. His actions must have a deeper meaning. Ron, you just don't understand. Ron said unconvinced. More of a genius than Headmaster Dumbledore? Hermione, you have no idea what you're talking about. Besides, Harry is the most powerful young wizard recognized in the magical world. He's the boy who lived. Some people say he defeated the mysterious person. Can Charles be more powerful than Harry? Can he defeat the mysterious person? Seeing Ron and Hermione arguing until their faces were red, Harry Potter looked embarrassed and said in a low voice, "Keep it down, we're almost there. Are we going to have the sorting ceremony when we get there? Have you thought about how to deal with the sorting ceremony? They're not really going to make us fight some monsters, are they?" At this point, Ron and Hermione's argument finally came to an end, and they both began to worry about the legendary incredibly bloody and cruel sorting ceremony that was about to take place. After the boats docked, this feeling of worry spread among the young wizards like a contagion. Only Charles was completely unconcerned about these things. At this moment, his full attention was drawn to Hogwarts nearby. As he got closer, he could feel the ubiquitous magic filling the castle. It was no exaggeration to say that even the bricks of the castle walls should contain magic. In Charles' opinion, the entire Hogwarts was simply a huge delicacy. Just finding a brick and taking a few sips could give him a lot of points. He roughly estimated that, not counting the books, Horcruxes, basilisk, etc. inside Hogwarts, just the castle itself and its accompanying defensive magic could potentially provide more deduction points than the Sea of Dragon Blood in Romania. Thinking of this, Charles' breathing couldn't help but quicken a bit. He took out his mithril wand and had an impulse to stamp a big, demolish, character on the clock tower of Hogwarts. Just then, a surprised cry interrupted Charles' action. The cry came from Professor McGonagall, who had come to welcome the new students to the sorting ceremony. As a master in the field of transfiguration, she could tell at a glance that the wooden boat Charles was riding in was not one issued by Hogwarts, but one transformed by transfiguration. Professor McGonagall quickly walked through the crowd, examining the wooden boat Charles was in, and did not spare her words of praise. Perfect transfiguration. Transforming a piece of wood into a wooden boat, both in terms of functionality and texture, it's exactly the same as a real one. Charles, you actually crossed the Black Lake in it. Even the older students can't do what you did, it's incredible. Professor McGonagall's cry attracted the attention of the young wizards, and even their nervous emotions were temporarily diluted. Transfiguration? That wooden boat was actually transformed using transfiguration. You're kidding, aren't you? Didn't they say transfiguration is the most difficult magic subject? My brother told me that in the first year, it's already excellent if you can turn a match into a needle. That young wizard, he turned wood into a boat? He hasn't even started school yet. Is this guy about to graduate? No, is Hogwarts this competitive? In the crowd, Ron's eyes widened, and his face turned red. Hermione, on the other hand, was beaming, as if she had performed this transfiguration herself, and glared at Ron in a defiant manner. Professor McGonagall looked at Charles at this moment, liking him more and more the more she looked. Such a young wizard with sacred attribute magic and such talent in transfiguration, wouldn't it be a pity if he didn't come to Gryffindor? If the sorting ceremony hadn't started yet, Mr. Charles, for this bit of transfiguration alone, I would definitely add 50 points to your house. Charles showed a smile, but sighed in his heart. No, what's the benefit of adding points? Isn't it just the little red flowers given out in kindergarten in my previous life? As for the house cup, that's just a big award certificate. Perhaps the children would enjoy it, but Charles was really not interested. At this time, he reminded Professor McGonagall, "Professor, is the sorting ceremony about to begin?" Professor McGonagall then snapped back from her admiration of Charles' transfiguration and quickly led the young wizards towards the Great Hall. Charles walked among the crowd, with curious gazes cast from all around, and occasional whispers, making him feel like a socialite in a line of elementary school students leaving school. He could only quicken his pace with a poker face, while silently saying in his heart, "I must apply to skip most of the courses. Otherwise, if I have to attend classes and live with them for the next few years, I'd rather eat 100 pounds of dragon dung." Fortunately, after entering the Great Hall, the worry and nervousness about the sorting ceremony filled the hearts of every young wizard, and no one had the leisure to pay attention to others. As for the older students who were already seated, their eyes were all without exception cast towards Harry Potter, excitedly whispering and discussing which house Harry Potter would go to. Soon, the sorting ceremony officially began, and the sorting hat appeared before the young wizards. The first young wizard was called by name, Hannah Abbott. Hannah, the granddaughter of old Tom from the Leaky Cauldron, who had also delivered food to Charles several times, turned red in the face and stumbled towards the sorting hat. The moment the sorting hat was placed on her head, it blurted out, "Hufflepuff." A round of applause erupted from the Hufflepuff table, welcoming Hannah Abbott. After that, there was round after round of applause. When Harry Potter put on the sorting hat, causing it to fall into a long silence before finally choosing Gryffindor, the applause from Gryffindor was so loud it seemed like it would lift the dome off. The Weasley twins were still whooping and cheering. "We've got Potter! We've got Potter!" As the applause gradually died down, another name was called out: Charles Evans. At this moment, the young wizards who had just heard Professor McGonagall praise Charles, as well as many professors on the staff table, turned their gazes towards him. A hint of anticipation even appeared on Dumbledore's face. He already knew what Charles had just done that was quite an impressive mastery of transfiguration. He hadn't taught Charles transfiguration, which meant Charles had learned it entirely on his own, proving that Charles' magical talent was even higher than Dumbledore had initially estimated. This way, the enforcer he had prepared for Harry Potter would be even more powerful, and he believed he could play a huge role in the fight against evil. Quirrell also shifted his gaze from Harry Potter and fixed it on Charles. Voldemort hissed in his mind. Look at Dumbledore's disgusting gaze on Charles. That old man must be trying to turn this young wizard into a pawn again. Heh, I'm going to make Charles my person instead, and make him willingly enter the realm of dark magic. Under these gazes, Charles calmly walked to the front of the Sorting Hat. He knew the principle behind the Sorting Hat's sorting. It was similar to legilimency, allowing the Sorting Hat to judge a person's character through some thoughts. If I use a clemency, the Sorting Hat won't be able to read any information. Forget it, I'll just let go a little and finish the ceremony quickly. So the next moment, Charles reached out and put on the Sorting Hat, and the first thought the Sorting Hat read was, "This hat looks quite old. How would it taste cooked? How about chopping it into large pieces and stir-frying it with some spicy crayfish seasoning? They say that stuff tastes good even dipped with choux sauce, so it should be good with a hat too, right? Hiss, I'm craving it." The Sorting Hat's expression instantly froze, and then as it saw the images of it being fried, stir-fried, and deep-fried appearing in Charles' mind, its expression gradually turned to horror. The next moment, a piercing scream erupted from the Sorting Hat's mouth, sharp enough to pierce the sky. The Sorting Hat shrieked hysterically, "Azkaban! It must be Azkaban! Someone, quick, someone take me off this young wizard's head, this Sorting Hat is in mortal danger." Today's guaranteed update is complete. I feel like I can write an extra chapter, but it will be later. Join me on Patreon if you want to request a novel, link in the description. 82. Creating History, The Collapsing Sorting Hat. Azkaban. This high-pitched shriek echoed under the dome of the Hogwarts Great Hall, instantly freezing the atmosphere. Dumbledore's expectant smile instantly stiffened, turning into disbelief. Professor McGonagall's eyes showed terror. Even in Quirrell's mind, Voldemort's voice paused for a moment, then burst into laughter as if he had heard the funniest thing. "Azkaban? Ptah ha ha ha, has this broken hat had its brain clogged with grease?" After the laughter, Voldemort's voice gradually became more curious. Or rather, does this little wizard, Charles Evans, really have such potential? Is he that evil enough for the Sorting Hat to open its mouth and sort him into Azkaban? Besides robbing Knockturn Alley, what else has he done? At this moment, the Hogwarts Great Hall was also in an uproar. Eyes filled with curiosity, terror, or awe converged on Charles. Charles, filled with righteous indignation, ripped off the Sorting Hat. "Azkaban? How am I related to Azkaban? Slander. Blatant slander." Meanwhile, Charles was filled with confusion. Is the Sorting Hat's legilimency that powerful? With his occlumency skills, even if he only opened a small crack to let it read a few thoughts, it could only read his strongest current thoughts. The Sorting Hat couldn't read his memories or see what he had done, so how did it sort him into Azkaban? Should he destroy the Sorting Hat now to eliminate the evidence? Fortunately, just before Charles was about to act, Dumbledore waved his wand. Silence. The noisy Great Hall immediately fell silent, all sounds muted by Dumbledore's spell. Charles was startled. He felt that the intensity of Dumbledore's silencing charm was so high that if he didn't have the dragon armor spell as magical protection to counteract it, he would probably be unable to make a sound for a while. That would mean being unable to cast spells, and his strength would drop sharply. Just from this one spell, it was clear that Dumbledore, holding the Elder Wand, had probably maxed out the spell's intensity. If Voldemort, who had split 7 Horcruxes and had explosive magical power, were to confront him head-on, he wouldn't last long. Deep Blue's prompt also sounded in Charles' mind. Host has obtained high-grade material for silencing charm. The points required for subsequent deduction of silencing charm have significantly decreased. Hearing this prompt, Charles' eyes immediately lit up. Did the old man Dumbledore drop gold? Does that mean he can find more opportunities for Dumbledore to make a move in the future? How many high-grade materials and how many points could he save? Meanwhile, Dumbledore came to the center of the Great Hall, picked up the Sorting Hat, and finally understood the reason behind the earlier events. After figuring out why the Sorting Hat had sorted Charles into Azkaban, Dumbledore's expression changed, looking at Charles with a mix of amusement and exasperation. When the Hogwarts sorting system was established, the creators placed countless restrictions on the Sorting Hat. In subsequent admissions, hundreds of loopholes were plugged to ensure the Sorting Hat sorted students in the most reasonable and fair manner. Therefore, for hundreds of years, the magic on the Sorting Hat has not needed any further adjustments. But perhaps starting today, a new restriction will have to be added to the Sorting Hat. A little wizard cannot be sorted into Azkaban just because they are thinking about how to cook the Sorting Hat. Charles Evans, I must say, you have created a piece of Hogwarts history. But I sincerely advise you, the Sorting Hat truly hasn't been washed in 1,000 years, so perhaps even the strongest seasoning won't cover the smell of grease on it. Cooking the Sorting Hat, please, really don't. I don't want the entire Hogwarts castle to be filled with the smell of grease. When Dumbledore's voice spread through the Great Hall, the silencing charm was immediately lifted, but everyone in the hall was still in shock, unable to recover for a long time. Their gazes fell on Charles, their eyes filled with admiration. Especially the Hufflepuff wizards, who were almost prostrating themselves before Charles. They had thought that Hufflepuff was the college most skilled in cooking, having tried all sorts of magical ingredients. But they never expected such a talent. The Sorting Hat even wanted to take a bite. When it came to eating, Hufflepuff would declare Charles the strongest. Immediately after, some young witches let out screams of terror. Originally, when they put on the Sorting Hat, they hadn't reacted much due to nervousness. Now that they had come to their senses and heard Dumbledore personally admit that the Sorting Hat had never been washed in 1,000 years, the smell of head grease seemed to rush over them, making them restless and eager to find a place to wash their hair quickly. After this farce, Dumbledore looked at the Sorting Hat. All right, now it's time for the serious sorting, isn't it? But even with the patch, the Sorting Hat still didn't want to be worn by Charles. Dumbledore, I'm telling you, he's serious, this little devil is serious, he really wants to eat me. I could feel it just now, his saliva was secreting like crazy. Watch your things, you must watch them carefully, otherwise, if you're not careful, he might chew on your wand. As for sorting, let him choose whatever he wants, but please keep me away from Charles Evans, and absolutely do not let him know where I'm stored. I don't want to be broken into and boiled one day. Dumbledore's face was full of helplessness. How can it be that exaggerated? It's normal for a young wizard to be a bit greedy. Sorting Hat, you're thinking too much. How could Mr. Charles break in and boil you? A young wizard wouldn't do something so brutal. After some persuasion, the Sorting Hat reluctantly and grumpily resumed the sorting process. It was placed back on Charles' head and whispered in Charles' mind. Charles Evans, where should I sort you? You have courage, I'm sure of that, you should have the courage to do some incredible things. Of course, you also have a passion for knowledge. I feel you have a rather strong appetite for those ancient magic books. Ambition is not lacking either. As for the pursuit of delicious food, you are even more intensely passionate. All 4 houses are very suitable for you, what do you think? In response, Charles asked a question. Which house can I eat more magical food, and have access to the most magical ingredients? The Sorting Hat immediately said, that would naturally be Hufflepuff. Hufflepuff himself was very keen on food, and many of the magical world's delicacies that have been passed down to this day came from Hufflepuff's hands. The students in this house are also very enthusiastic about eating. They have their own small kitchen, open 24 hours a day. At the same time, Hufflepuff has always produced many masters of magical herbs, who can access various rare herbs, and they are also very good at raising magical creatures. Before the words were finished, Charles made his choice without hesitation. Hufflepuff. When this loud shout rang out, the Hufflepuff long table also echoed with warm applause. Countless Hufflepuff wizards looked at Charles with the gaze of welcoming a divine being. They were sure that when Charles, the first young wizard in 1,000 years to think of making food with the Sorting Hat, joined, the Hufflepuff house's recipes would definitely have many interesting additions. At this moment, Charles slowly stood up, his hand slowly reaching towards the Sorting Hat on his head, while sincerely saying to the Sorting Hat in his heart, I'm sorry, Grandpa Sorting Hat, I was just a little greedy, I didn't expect to give you such a big scare. I just thought you were an ordinary magic hat, but who knew you were actually a unique Sorting Hat with life, thoughts, and 1,000 years of history. If I had known this earlier, how could I have had designs on you? Can you accept my apology? The Sorting Hat's fright slowly subsided, and at the same time, it felt a bit guilty. Although it was scared, how could it shout out Azkaban's sorting in public? This had too bad an impact on this young wizard. It was rare that this child actually apologized to it. Yes, he was just a little greedy, and ignorance is no sin. So the Sorting Hat kindly said, it's all right, child, I should also apologize to you, what I did just now was too inappropriate. Before the Sorting Hat could finish speaking, Charles eagerly said in his mind, Then can I come and talk to you, Grandpa Sorting Hat, when I have time? I feel you speak very nicely, you're knowledgeable, and very humorous. Alas, I don't have many friends, I'm not sociable, and I don't get along with other children. The Sorting Hat immediately said happily, "Of course, child. To be honest, being taken out only once a year makes me quite lonely. I really want to find someone to talk to. I'm kept in the cabinet in the headmaster's office, on the third shelf, second compartment from the left as you enter. If you want to talk to me, you can come to the headmaster's office to find me." The password to the headmaster's office is some strange sweet, like cockroach clusters or something. You can just try them one by one from Honeyduck's candy list. Just as the Sorting Hat was rambling on, Charles slowly grinned and took it off his head. Headmaster's office, third shelf from the left, second compartment as you enter, right? I've got it. In that instant, the Sorting Hat was dumbfounded. Holy cow, he was tricking me. Ewan. Dumbledore, Dumbledore, I want to move, Dumbledore. But before the Sorting Hat could even shout, Charles waved his wand and tapped it lightly. A silencing charm plunged the Sorting Hat's voice into silence. The Sorting Hat's eyes were wide with fury, babbling something unintelligible. It stared at Dumbledore, hoping Dumbledore would stand up for it. Dumbledore, do something, Dumbledore. Say something. In broad daylight, under the clear sky, Charles Evans won't let me speak. Then, under the Sorting Hat's hopeful gaze, Dumbledore made a move. He cast another silencing charm on the Sorting Hat. Merlin's beard, this hat was indeed very noisy. Tonight was already chaotic enough, and Dumbledore didn't want to cause any more drama. At the same time, Dumbledore gave Charles a look of praise. Beautiful silencing charm, Charles. 10 points to Hufflepuff. Instantly, the Sorting Hat was dumbstruck. Damn it. This world, just end. An extra 3,000 words added today. Thank you all for your support. Join me on Patreon if you want to request a novel, link in the description. 83. Hufflepuff's Defense Mechanism? You've come to the right place. After the commotion between Charles and the Sorting Hat subsided, Dumbledore, as if afraid of any further mishaps, quickly moved on to the next part of the ceremony. Dishes of food appeared on the long tables of the 4 houses, and the already hungry students eagerly began to eat. Charles also deliberately chose not to use Deep Blue to convert the food into deduction points, but instead tasted the Hogwarts food himself, nodding slightly. It had to be said, the food at Hogwarts tasted quite good. Among the British cuisine that consisted of little more than fried fish and chips, it was already at a level that stood out from the crowd. After all, it was the work of house elves, and the house elves in the Hogwarts kitchen had passed down their skills for generations, cooking every day. They were probably comparable to the kitchen of the Shaolin Temple in the movies of his previous life, each one a culinary master. What Charles found regrettable, however, was that the dishes served were made from ordinary ingredients, with no magical ingredients included. Therefore, no matter how delicious they were, the deduction points they could provide to Charles were very meager. But this was not surprising. Magical ingredients were already expensive, and those that could be used for cooking and still taste good were even rarer. If Hogwarts were to provide magical ingredients to so many students every day, the tuition fees collected would probably not even last a month. It seems I'll have to bring my own ingredients if I want to eat well. The Sorting Hat said that Hufflepuff House has its own small kitchen, and it even contains magical recipes passed down by Hufflepuff herself. If I collect the corresponding ingredients, I can have the Hufflepuff House elves make magical meals. Not only are they quite delicious, but some also have special effects, not even inferior to potions. Thinking of this, Charles couldn't help but lick his lips. The next batch of dragon materials he ordered from Romania should arrive soon. Previously, in order to minimize the loss of magical power from the dragon materials, he had directly swallowed all the materials after killing the robbing wizards. Thinking about it now, it was quite regrettable. After all, whether dragon materials were used to concoct potions or magical medicines, after being compounded with various materials and their magical powers stimulating each other, they could potentially unleash even more powerful magic. Eating them in that way would yield more deduction points. Charles didn't have the conditions before, but now that he was at Hogwarts, he could give it a try. In addition to dragon materials, there were also plenty of various magical ingredients at Hogwarts, some of which were even rare items that might not be found in the entire magical world. For example, the 1,000-year-old basilisk, there wasn't a second one to be found in the magical world. If he were to use basilisk bones to make soup, and have a pot of dragon and tiger soup, how fragrant would that be? A look of anticipation appeared in Charles' eyes. It was at this moment that the welcome feast gradually came to an end. Dumbledore, just like in the original story, first had everyone sing the school song, then warned the new students not to go near the forbidden forest and the end of the corridor on the 4th floor, and only then did he have the prefects of each house lead the young wizards to their common rooms. In the ancient castle, the stairs moved constantly as if they had a will of their own, crisscrossing and making the place like a maze. Hufflepuff Prefect Cedric Diggory, the most outstanding student in the original story who died at the hands of Voldemort in the Triwizard Tournament, was leading Charles and the other new students through it, explaining the patterns of these stairs. The young Hufflepuffs listened attentively, not daring to be negligent in the slightest. Some even took out paper and pens, afraid of being late for class tomorrow because they remembered the stairs incorrectly. This was also one of the characteristics of Hufflepuff House, diligent and down-to-earth. Although not too smart, diligence could make up for lack of intelligence. In a sense, knowing that you are not smart and have a poor memory, and therefore needing to listen and remember carefully, wasn't that also a kind of intelligence? Charles didn't need to be like these young wizards. After his mind became stronger, not only did his reaction speed increase, but his memory also improved significantly. While not photographic memory, it was far beyond ordinary people. He remembered what Cedric said after hearing it once, and he even figured out some of the patterns of the stairs movement himself. Under Cedric's continuous explanation, they finally arrived at the entrance of the Hufflepuff common room. Cedric emphasized, "You must listen carefully to what I say next. Each house's common room has a unique entry mechanism to prevent students from other houses from entering. Gryffindor's is a password, Ravenclaw's door knocker asks questions, I'm not sure about Slytherin's, but it's similar. Our Hufflepuff common room is entered by knocking on the door knocker with a specific rhythm. The rhythm for opening the door changes every week. It's taken from a few notes in a piece of music by the prefects and then announced to the whole house, so you'd better remember it." Speaking of this, a hint of pride appeared on Cedric's face. The constantly changing password is simple and unpretentious, but it's also the most secure. Unlike the common rooms of other houses, our Hufflepuff common room is truly impossible for anyone to sneak into unless we actively invite them. Oh right, our common room also has a unique punishment mechanism for intruders, so you'd better write down the opening rhythm for each week in your notebook, otherwise this punishment mechanism is not pleasant. Hearing Cedric mention the punishment mechanism, the young Hufflepuffs were clearly nervous. Will flying knives fly out of the door? Or will it cast a curse on those who knock on the wrong door? What should I do? I'm a little scared. I don't dare to knock on the door by myself. Cedric said with a smile, "This is Hogwarts. How could they use such a harmful punishment method?" He blinked. As everyone knows, our house founder, Hufflepuff, loved food and therefore created many magical seasonings. Once, he accidentally created a magical vinegar that was unimaginably sour. If this vinegar gets into your mouth, you won't be able to taste anything but sourness for a whole week, and everything you eat will feel like it's going to make your teeth fall out. And as time goes on, the sourness of this magical vinegar will get stronger and stronger, so this has become our unique Hufflepuff defense mechanism. He pointed to the nozzles on either side of the common room door. See? If you knock with the wrong rhythm to open the door, this magical vinegar will spray out. The first time you knock incorrectly is fine, it's diluted, and it will probably only make you sour for a day. Knock incorrectly a second time, and you'll be sour for 3 days. If you knock incorrectly a third time, then be prepared for the torment of having your mouth feel like it's holding 10 lemons for a week. Just then, Charles suddenly asked, "What if the intruder still doesn't give up and keeps getting it wrong?" Cedric was stunned for a moment, then revealed a sly smile. "The magical vinegar will get older and older, and the magic power contained within it will get stronger and stronger. If the intruder has good teeth, he might be able to taste the finest vinegar from the time of the Hufflepuff founder. Tisk tisk, that taste, it might even make ghosts cry from the sourness." As for many people breaking in together, trying to deplete our Hufflepuff magical vinegar reserves, that's also a pipe dream. It's said that the house used the undetectable extension charm to store a lake's worth of vinegar. Intruders can't possibly drink a whole lake's worth of vinegar, can they? Hearing this, the little Hufflepuffs all clapped with eyes full of reverence, and even Charles was no exception. While clapping, Charles couldn't help but his eyes light up, with only one thought in his mind. Hufflepuff House, I really came to the right place. Join me on Patreon if you want to request a novel, link in the description. 84, Target, Three-Headed Dog, Hellhound Cerberus. After explaining to the little Hufflepuffs how to enter the common room, Cedric led them inside. The Hufflepuff common room wasn't as cool and detached as Ravenclaw's blue-themed one, which resembled a small library, nor was it as luxurious as Slytherin's. It was somewhat similar to the Gryffindor common room, both using warm colors, but compared to the flamboyant gold and red scheme, the Hufflepuff common room felt even warmer and more comfortable. It was the kind of feeling you get when you're snuggled in bed during winter and just want to stay there forever. The most exaggerated part was that there was a door right next to the common room fireplace that led directly to the Hufflepuff kitchens. When he mentioned this, Cedric's eyes lit up. The house elves at Hogwarts are already excellent cooks. But since ancient times, only the house elves with the best cooking skills have been allowed into the Hufflepuff kitchens. Every time Hogwarts has important guests, the most lavish and delicious banquets are always prepared by the elves in the Hufflepuff kitchens. You can't get this kind of food just anywhere outside, and other houses only get to eat it a few times a year. But in Hufflepuff, it's available around the clock. No matter when you're hungry, there will always be hot, delicious food waiting for you in the kitchen. If you can get your hands on some special ingredients, the house elves can even customize a meal just for you. The taste is absolutely wonderful. As Cedric described it, the little wizards' faces were full of longing. Just thinking about being able to eat delicious late-night snacks in this comfortable common room made even doing their final assignments seem quite happy. Seeing the little wizards' expressions, Cedric also showed a satisfied look. Putting everything else aside, the sense of belonging and unity among Hufflepuff students was definitely the strongest among the four houses. Even Gryffindor had to take a back seat. How was this cultivated? It was by having late-night snacks together, one after another, every night. While Gryffindor was busy sneaking out at night, Ravenclaw was busy reading, and Slytherin was busy with who knows what. The wizards in Hufflepuff were busy eating. How could their sense of belonging not be strong? Then, Cedric continued. Alright, you can explore the common room later. For now, let's take you to your respective dormitories. Standing in front of a four-person dormitory door, Charles' eyes showed a hint of nostalgia. A dormitory, it had been so many years since he had lived in one. But after a moment, Charles' nostalgia vanished, and he pulled out his wand. What he missed wasn't the dormitory, but the carefree time he spent studying. As for dormitories, unless you had a really good relationship with your roommates, who would miss them? Miss the cramped bunk beds, miss being restricted in this and that, with no privacy whatsoever. Forget about it. What normal adult would say they liked living in a dormitory, and having to live with 3 other kids? Pure torture. Immediately, Charles pushed the door open and walked in. The 3 roommates inside all looked towards the door, ready to welcome Charles, but the next moment, a flash of magic light appeared. Charles cast a Confundus charm in the dormitory. The effect of this Confundus charm was to make the roommates ignore Charles' existence, and even make them believe that Charles was not their roommate, but just a regular classmate, and that their dormitory had only ever had 3 people. With Charles' transformed mental strength, coupled with the magical power that surpassed most adult wizards after being fed back by the ancient dragon form, even without deliberately practicing the Confundus charm, the most basic version was enough to work perfectly on the little wizards. Instantly, the 3 roommates were stunned for a moment. What was I just thinking of doing? Oh right, I still need to pack my luggage. Even when Charles walked past them, the 3 people seemed not to see him, completely ignoring Charles' actions. Then, Charles took out a tent that had been enchanted with an undetectable extension charm, and then repeatedly cast various protective spells on it. This way, even if there was an occasional room check, the student council members who came in would not discover that there was a tent here. And when Charles lifted the tent flap and walked in, inside was a super luxurious suite, exquisitely decorated, with all kinds of furniture readily available, and a super large and soft bed. Charles' eyes showed satisfaction. As expected of the gift from old Tom at the Leaky Cauldron for me, a super VIP, it's really quite good. The area is equivalent to a large flat in my previous life, and a 5-star presidential suite is only about this good. Although I'll be very busy during my time at Hogwarts and may not sleep here often, it's still very nice to come here to rest occasionally, much better than squeezing into a dormitory with 3 kids. Of course, not all dormitories at Hogwarts were 4-person rooms, there were also single rooms. For example, the prefects of each house all lived in luxurious single rooms. According to the original records, the luxury of single dormitories was also similar to that of a 5-star hotel, but you needed to be a prefect to get one. And as for being a prefect, Charles was not interested. Isn't that just student council work? It's a ton of trouble, managing this and that. Let whoever wants to do it. How could that compare to the luxurious tent Charles got for free? Next, Charles lay on the bed, contemplating how to spend the rest of his time. After all, it's the first night at Hogwarts. How can I possibly sleep? Besides, I didn't eat enough at dinner just now. The deduction points provided by those ordinary foods aren't even as much as eating half a pound of dragon dung. I have to go satisfy my stomach and get some points along the way. A series of options appeared in Charles' mind, and he eliminated them one by one. Basilisk? I haven't learned Parseltongue yet, so I can't enter the Chamber of Secrets for now. And the basilisk has an instant death effect. Dragon armor spell might not even work. There's still a risk of failure. I'll wait until I get a spell related to ice to ensure it's foolproof. As for the Forbidden Forest and the Black Lake, they're a bit far. I won't bother with them on the first day. Same with Ravenclaw's diadem. It takes a while to find the room of requirement. No rush. After some thought, a name surfaced in Charles' mind. Three-headed dog, you're the one. This extremely rare magical creature is only found in Greece, and its rarity surpasses even that of dragons. Its most famous traits are its seemingly endless strength, aggressive nature, and super strong recovery ability. And the most famous three-headed dog in mythology is none other than the hellhound Cerberus from Greek mythology. As the guardian of the underworld, Cerberus is inherently in the netherworld and is almost impossible to kill, possessing super strong resistance to instant death magic. Perhaps the three-headed dogs in Greece now still retain a little of its bloodline, making them extremely rare creatures with resistance to the killing curse. It's no wonder that in the original work, even with Voldemort possessing Quirrell, it still took a lot of effort to get the Philosopher's Stone by passing the three-headed dog. This thing is indeed difficult to deal with. Even if Voldemort possessed someone to fight, his remaining soul state would probably consume a lot of power. Charles chose the three-headed dog as his target not only to get some deduction points from it but also with another idea in mind. That is, perhaps through the blood of the three-headed dog, he could gain a second magical Oxio transformation, transforming into an existence close to the legendary Cerberus. Join me on Patreon if you want to request a novel, link in the description. 85, Chapter 85, Can't You Just Be Human? Fluffy, you smell so good. Thinking about the legendary descriptions of Fluffy, Charles couldn't help but feel a rare sense of anticipation. That was a monster that could give heroes and demigods in various myths a huge headache, so its strength was naturally formidable. But what Charles valued most was its resistance to instant death curses. After all, the killing curse was truly too overpowered in this era. Even if the real strength difference was several levels, if a killing curse came and hit, you would be instantly killed. The key was that according to the original work, this thing could not be blocked by any protective magic. All defenses were completely ignored. As long as the caster met the conditions and could unleash the power of the killing curse, hitting the target meant certain death. Without resistance to the killing curse, one had to be careful everywhere, and a moment of carelessness could lead to capsizing in a ditch. But if the idea of transforming into Fluffy through magical animagus could truly be realized, the threat of the killing curse and similar instant death curses to Charles might plummet. Therefore, even if it was just a possibility, Charles still attached great importance to the three-headed dog. The second slot for magical animagus transformation had already been reserved for the three-headed dog. At this moment, Charles walked out of the dormitory, left the Hufflepuff common room, and came to the nearest staircase. Then Charles stopped. Cedric's previous explanation had indeed covered the routes to several classrooms. But the end of the corridor on the fourth floor where Fluffy was located, being a forbidden area mentioned by Dumbledore, was not mentioned by Cedric at all. Even if Charles had an exceptional memory and knew all the routes clearly, he couldn't conjure up a route he hadn't heard of. As for using Deep Blue to deduce, using Deep Blue for such a small matter was not the way to waste it. After pondering for a moment, Charles made a decision. Since entering Hogwarts, whether it was Dumbledore, other professors, or older students, they all said that Hogwarts is a living castle. These stairs also seem to understand human speech, and even each section of stairs has its own personality. Since that's the case, let's see if my unique way of asking for directions can work. The next moment, Charles drew out his wand, tapped the handrail of the stairs in front of him, and said faintly, "Hey, hey, hey, can you hear me? I'm giving you and your stair friends 3 minutes to line up and send me all the way to the fourth floor corridor. Otherwise, I'll eat you." As soon as these words were spoken, the stairs, which had been operating at a specific rhythm, suddenly stopped, as if they had heard something that completely bewildered them. In the 1,000 years at Hogwarts, it had heard and seen countless secrets. It had seen young couples unable to control their emotions, kissing passionately on this section of stairs at night. It had seen ambitious people walk up this section of stairs, tiptoeing towards the restricted section. It had even seen 2 male professors at Hogwarts upholding British tradition, performing indecent acts on this section of stairs. But it swore that this was the first time it had heard a newly enrolled little wizard threaten to eat it. Instantly, the operating speed of this section of stairs increased several times, like a whistling windmill, clearly very angry and not wanting Charles to step on it again. In response, Charles sighed. "Looks like you didn't listen to me. What, did the hard floor tiles give you some false sense of security? Then you're wrong. The countless wall bricks in Diagon Alley, the wall bricks at platform 9 3/4 are not necessarily more fragile than you. Then, Charles leaped nimbly, standing steadily on the rapidly moving stairs, and gave the stairs a sharp suck. Deduction points plus 20. Deep Blue's prompt sounded immediately. At the same time, the stairs suddenly stiffened. It hadn't expected that this little wizard was serious. No, Hufflepuffs were gluttonous, but they couldn't be this gluttonous, right? You even suck the stairs. Can you be a person or not? Even more outrageous was that with Charles sucked just now, a part of the magic was really sucked away by Charles. If all the magic were sucked away by Charles, then the magic of this section of stairs would cease to exist, and it would only become an ordinary section of stairs. Thinking of this, the stairs couldn't help but tremble, the steps rising and falling, as if feeling fear. Charles grinned. Now you know fear? Good, then tell your friends to hurry up and send me up. Also tell the stairs of Hogwarts, from now on, when you see me, open your eyes wider and be more discerning. I don't want to waste time rushing up the stairs. The stairs shook twice, as if indicating they understood. Immediately, they began to slowly rotate, sending Charles upwards. Even the steps began to automatically rise and fall, gradually carrying Charles to the end of the stairs. And there, a new section of stairs happened to arrive, taking Charles on. Just like that, Charles didn't even move his feet, nor did he bother to find a path. He was carried all the way up to the fourth-floor corridor by the magical stairs. Charles nodded with satisfaction. He waved his wand, casting a disillusionment charm, and disappeared into the air, stepping towards the end of the fourth-floor corridor. After Charles left, the stairs that had brought him seemed to let out a collective sigh of relief. They had seen everything in the past 1,000 years, but this was the first time they had encountered such a little monster that ate stairs. They considered themselves unlucky. Then, the stairs one by one arrived at a place where the class schedule was posted. They had nothing else to do but memorize the first-year Hufflepuff class schedule. This way, the next time Charles went out, they would know which classroom to send him to. Let's not dwell on the pitiful and humble state of the stairs for now. At this moment, at the end of the fourth-floor corridor, two figures fled out, still shaken. From their fiery red hair and almost identical appearances, it was naturally the Weasley twins from the original story. Given their mischievous nature, after hearing Dumbledore say not to go near here if they didn't want to die horribly, they naturally couldn't resist. On the first night of school, they came here for a nighttime stroll. We calculated it perfectly. The headmaster and professors are all tired on the first day and won't be patrolling here. The one patrolling tonight is our old acquaintance, Filch. We're great at getting rid of him. I thought there would be some treasure under this trapdoor, but it turned out to be such a huge three-headed dog. It scared me to death. Good thing we ran fast, otherwise we would have really become dog food. While the Weasley twins were still lingering with fear, they couldn't help but beam with excitement, thrilled by the breathtaking adventure they had just experienced. At the same time, they were also curious as to why the three-headed dog was kept here. Looking at this, the three-headed dog seems to be a guard. Whatever is guarded by a three-headed dog must be something incredible. The Weasley twins exchanged glances, determined to see what was inside to satisfy their curiosity. However, for now, it was better to go back to sleep. Then, the two took out the Marauders map, and after solemnly swearing that they were up to no good, dense ink dots spread across it, encompassing the movements of everyone at Hogwarts. The two originally planned to avoid Filch this way, but at this moment, Fred, one of the twins, let out a low cry and suddenly looked at the end of the corridor displayed on the map. There, a name appeared, Charles Evans. Their expressions changed. Oh no. It's that first-year Hufflepuff little wizard. He came here for a nighttime stroll. Even though they loved playing pranks, they clearly understood how dangerous it would be for a first-year little wizard to encounter a three-headed dog. Without hesitation, the two pulled out their wands and turned back, rushing towards the end of the corridor. Quick, go save him. At this moment, at the trapdoor at the end of the corridor, Charles had already pushed it open and stepped inside. What greeted him was a gust of foul-smelling hot air. A three-headed dog, occupying all the space from the ceiling to the floor, stared fiercely at Charles. Drip, drip. The sound of saliva dripping echoed. The three-headed dog was stunned for a moment. The two little wizards just ran away, and it couldn't eat them, so it swallowed all the saliva it had secreted. Where was this sound of dripping saliva coming from? Immediately after, it saw Charles shyly wiping his mouth. Sorry, I couldn't help myself when I saw something delicious. I lost my composure. Charles stared at the three-headed dog's massive body with burning eyes, saying intoxicatedly, "Three-headed dog brother, you smell so good. Let me smell you, let me get closer and smell you." The three heads of the three-headed dog looked at each other, their already low intelligence becoming even more confused at this moment. What's going on? Did I run into a lunatic? Join me on Patreon if you want to request a novel, link in the description. 86. Three-headed dog Fluffy, let me sterilize you. The three heads of the three-headed dog looked at each other, their eyes filled with confusion, as if they couldn't figure out what was happening. But the next moment, as Charles got closer, the three-headed dog's confusion dissipated, and its instinctive ferocity was triggered. Accompanied by roars, the three heads lunged at Charles. Charles, in response, took a deep breath, a cold glint in his eyes. After deducing a clemency and enhancing his mental strength using the memory palace, his power had significantly increased compared to before coming to Hogwarts. He just hadn't found an opportunity to use it, and now was the perfect time to test it on the three-headed dog. The next moment, Charles actively activated the dragon armor spell. On his body surface, powerful magic formed a special structure, incredibly tough, like dragon scales and dragon hide. Even the three-headed dog, with its astonishing bite force, felt like it was biting into rubber after lunging, old and stuck in its teeth, completely unable to bite through. Charles' eyes were bright. If it were the previous dragon armor spell, even actively activating it wouldn't have achieved this. But now, the defensive power had undergone a qualitative improvement compared to before, which was the benefit of enhanced mental strength. Then, Charles once again waved his mithril wand. Transfiguration, smooth to the point of being art, roared out from the tip of the wand. Earlier, when Charles crossed the Black Lake by turning wood into a wooden boat, it had caused Professor McGonagall to exclaim in admiration, saying she would add 50 points to Charles' house. But now, if Professor McGonagall were here, Hufflepuff's points would probably be added until the hourglass exploded. Change, 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 everything in the room was changing. The floor was changing, becoming like quicksand, like mud, giving the heavy three-headed dog no place to stand, only allowing it to sink down little by little. The ceiling was also changing, becoming as pliable as modeling clay, transforming into chains that hung down and wrapped around the three-headed dog's body. One wall was even directly turned into a stone man by Charles, firmly holding down the three-headed dog Fluffy. During this process, the three-headed dog Fluffy naturally struggled constantly. The powerful anti-magic effect of its skin was also taking effect, continuously weakening the effectiveness of the transfiguration on it. If it were before his mental transformation, the strength of Charles' transfiguration on Fluffy would likely have had minimal effect. The chains would have slipped off, unable to wrap around it at all. But now, even when weakened, chains were still firmly wrapping around Fluffy one by one. Coupled with the changes in the ground and the stone man wrestling head-on with Fluffy, who only relied on brute force to charge around, was slowly wrapped in chains and hoisted up, unable to move. Even the three dog heads were gagged by the chains forming a muzzle, only allowing the sound of rapid panting to be heard. Looking at the three-headed dog Fluffy subdued by transfiguration, Charles shook his head, a hint of disappointment in his eyes. He had originally thought it would be more troublesome, but he didn't expect the process of subduing Fluffy to be so easy. In fact, Fluffy's three heads, besides being able to attack together, couldn't use any other magical abilities. Yet in mythology, the three-headed dog Cerberus at least possessed the ability to spit venom. Poison made from its venom could even poison demigod heroes in mythology, showing how terrifying its toxicity was. But the three-headed dog Fluffy, from beginning to end, had nothing but spitting some saliva. This showed that the Cerberus bloodline in it was extremely thin. Charles wasn't even sure if he could get what he wanted from the three-headed dog Fluffy and obtain the transformation of the legendary three-headed dog of hell. He frowned slightly, a blade of light bursting from the tip of his wand, easily cutting open Fluffy's skin and releasing a large bottle of three-headed dog blood. Then Charles tilted his head back and drank it all in one gulp, whispering in his mind, "Deep Blue, analyze the magic in the three-headed dog blood. Is it possible to obtain power related to the three-headed dog of hell, similar to how I previously obtained the dragon language inheritance from the Ukrainian Iron Bally's blood?" A moment later, Deep Blue's mechanical reply came, "Three-headed dog magic analysis complete. It does contain a bloodline related to the three-headed dog of hell, but it is too weak. Using this blood for magical animagus transformation can only turn you into a normal three-headed dog, not a three-headed dog of hell, unless further deduction is performed." Even though he had anticipated it, Charles' eyes still showed disappointment. If he could only turn into a normal three-headed dog, it would be a loss. It would take up a magical animagus transformation slot and require an extra large investment of points to possibly deduce the method to turn into a three-headed dog of hell, which was too low in cost-effectiveness. However, to make Charles give up the idea of the three-headed dog of hell, he was truly a bit reluctant to let go. That was a transformation that could potentially have resistance to the killing curse, which was too significant. And once he could turn into a three-headed dog of hell and have resistance to instant death curses, Charles could stand undefeated against the gaze of the millennial basilisk and quickly enter the Chamber of Secrets to deal with that millennial basilisk. If he were to raise basilisks later, he wouldn't have to worry about accidentally dying from looking into a basilisk's eyes. Giving up just like that was truly unwilling, so Charles asked again, "Is there a way to solve it?" Deep Blue replied again, "By giving the three-headed dog certain potions with atavistic effects, perhaps the concentration of the Cerberus bloodline within its body can be greatly increased." Hearing this, Charles' eyes lit up. "As long as there's a way, as long as your thinking doesn't falter, there are always more solutions than problems. Hogwarts has a potions master, after all. Perhaps Snape can solve the problem of the atavistic potion. As long as there's a glimmer of hope, he has to fight for it." Immediately, Charles' gaze fell upon the three-headed dog before him. "Looks like you're lucky too, you won't have to die today." At this moment, Charles noticed that the wound on the three-headed dog Fluffy, which he had just cut open to draw blood, had already healed as good as new. This kind of recovery ability was precisely what made it so troublesome. But at this moment, Charles suddenly had an idea. Killing the three-headed dog is one big meal. But if I raise the three-headed dog and take blood and meat from it every day, that would be much more cost-effective. That's a full meal every day. With such strong regenerative ability, isn't this a good candidate for farming? At this moment, the three-headed dog Fluffy suddenly felt a chill run down its spine. From the incredibly strong little wizard before it, an aura that made it shudder emanated, as if he was contemplating inhumane torture upon it. If it weren't currently tied up and suspended, the three-headed dog Fluffy would have wanted to perform a bow for Charles, urging this plague god to leave quickly. It watched Charles with trepidation, not knowing what Charles intended to do with it. Charles was also stroking his chin, examining the three-headed dog Fluffy. "Since I'm already here today, I can't go back empty-handed, can I? I haven't gained any deduction points today yet. What should I take back? Chop off a dog paw, or chop off a dog head?" But no matter how Charles thought about it, he wasn't quite satisfied. Mainly, professors would occasionally come to the place where Fluffy was, and even Dumbledore might personally come to inspect the various checkpoints. If he went too far, like chopping off a dog head, it would probably take a long time for it to grow back, even with the three-headed dog's regenerative ability. What if Dumbledore and the others took the three-headed dog away? Where would Charles get the nutrition he was missing? Besides, chopping off dog paws and dog heads is too cruel. I, Charles, am not such a cruel person. The three-headed dog Fluffy seemed to understand human speech, visibly letting out a sigh of relief. It didn't want its paws or head chopped off either. Merlin above, it seemed this little wizard still had some humanity. But the next moment, the words that came out of Charles' mouth caused Fluffy's 6 eyes to instantly widen. Charles said slowly, "A part that is hidden, not easily discovered, and will be even better for you after it's gone." "Ah, I've thought of it. Fluffy, you're so big now, you're an adult, right? Have you been neutered? I heard that being neutered is good for dogs' health, can prolong their life, and even help them gain weight. I, Charles, always act fairly and aim for a win-win situation. How about this? It's settled. From now on, I'll come here every day to perform free neutering surgery on you. I'll gain ingredients, and you'll gain health and a longer lifespan. Happy cooperation." Fluffy's 3 heads were all collectively dumbfounded. The massive three-headed dog was now trembling like a sieve. It never dreamed that Charles would set his sights on its precious parts, and even want to use them as ingredients. Once was bad enough, but he wanted to come over every day to neuter it. Was this still a little wizard? This was a demon. "Hey, Ancestor Cerberus, are you there? Can you please drag this little wizard down to the underworld? He's not human at all, he's the real dog." Join me on Patreon if you want to request a novel, link in the description. 87 The Strongest Defensive Magic. 1,000,000 points. After seeing Charles Evans's name appear on the Marauder's map and enter the trapdoor at the end of the 4th-floor corridor, the Weasley twins, who had already left, ran back desperately. There wasn't enough time to call a professor now, only they could rescue Charles immediately. Hope it's not too late. The Weasley twins held dung bombs in their hands. This was a method they had come up with in a short time to deal with the three-headed dog. As everyone knows, a dog can't change its ways. Perhaps throwing a dung bomb would make the three-headed dog change its appetite and spare Charles? But when the two of them rushed into the trapdoor, wands in one hand and dung bombs in the other, ready to rescue Charles, the scene before them made them freeze. Charles was nowhere to be seen inside the trapdoor. Their hearts immediately tightened, and they simultaneously thought of one possibility. Could Charles Evans have been eaten by the three-headed dog? This thought made their faces turn pale, but soon, they realized something was wrong. If Charles had been eaten, there should at least be bloodstains and torn uniform fragments on the ground, but there was nothing. Moreover, even the three-headed dog had lost its previous ferocity. It looked wilted, huddled in the corner of the room, curled up, emitting a whimpering sound from its mouth and nose. Looking at it, it seemed like it had been beaten and cried. Even when it saw the Weasley twins, the three-headed dog didn't think of pouncing. It seemed quite scared, its massive body shrinking even further. This left the Weasley twins completely bewildered. What was going on? In such a short time, the three-headed dog had completely changed its temperament. What terrible thing had it encountered? The Weasley twins exited the trapdoor and couldn't help but pull out the Marauder's map again, wanting to see where Charles Evans's name appeared. But when they reached out, they found that the Marauder's map had vanished. The Weasley twins looked at each other. What's happening? The Marauder's map was just in our pocket, how is it gone now? This is absolutely insane. But before they could think further, the voice of the caretaker, Filch, came from the staircase. Got you. The Weasley twins reflexively threw the dung bombs and then took off running. As they ran, they exchanged glances, and a thought arose in both their minds. Charles Evans, this first-year student is definitely not simple. Meanwhile, Charles, with the night's spoils, leisurely ascended the Hogwarts stairs. The stairs were very cooperative this time, sending Charles floor by floor towards the Hufflepuff common room. In Charles' hand, there was also a Marauder's map, the very one he had taken from the Weasley twins just now using the disillusionment charm. Looking at the Marauder's map, a strange look appeared in Charles' eyes. This thing was quite impressive. In the original story it could not only show the names of Dumbledore and Voldemort but even Peter Pettigrew in his animagus form. It was truly incredible that something like this was created by James Potter and others. This couldn't help but make Charles wonder if the technology of the Marauder's map could be replicated elsewhere, or if it could be expanded. Wouldn't it be possible to clearly detect all the movements of the enemy's personnel? Why wasn't technology like the Marauder's map seen being used in the battles between the Order of the Phoenix and the Death Eaters? The only explanation was that the special nature of the Marauder's map relied on Hogwarts. James Potter and others must have used Hogwarts' own magic to create the Marauder's map. Only this could explain why the Marauder's map could clearly display the movements of everyone in Hogwarts, because this thing was essentially borrowing Hogwarts' surveillance authority. Charles tapped his wand on the Marauder's map and spoke the oath from the original story. Soon, names and the layout of Hogwarts appeared on the parchment. Along with this scene, the deep blue prompt sounded in Charles' mind. Host has obtained knowledge that can be deduced. Hogwarts protective magic, partial. The initial deduction requires 1,000,000 deduction points. Proceed with the deduction. Acquiring the legacies of the 4 Hogwarts founders will significantly reduce the required deduction points. Hearing this prompt, Charles Evans's pupils slightly contracted. He hadn't expected that his guess was actually correct. The Marauder's map truly borrowed from Hogwarts protective magic. He also hadn't expected that Hogwarts protective magic could even be deduced by the deep blue. And just looking at the points required for the initial deduction, it was the most demanding among all the knowledge Charles had encountered so far. But thinking about it, it wasn't strange. This protective magic had enveloped Hogwarts for 1,000 years, with very few instances of failure. Almost no external enemies could break through, earning Hogwarts the title of the safest place in the magical world. This was enough to prove the power of this magic. How could the masterpiece of the 4 founders be undeservedly famous? The protective magic likely contained the 4 individuals' vast and profound magical knowledge. Furthermore, over the past 1,000 years, generations of headmasters, professors, and outstanding wizards had continuously improved this protective magic. Thoroughly understanding this protective magic meant mastering the essence of so many protective spells, allowing one to independently create a place comparable to Hogwarts. Calling this the strongest protective magic in history wouldn't be an exaggeration. If the required deduction points were low, that would be abnormal. A thought even surfaced in Charles' mind. Hogwarts' protective magic needed to cover the entire school and still possessed such strong defensive power. If its range were reduced, making its protective efficacy more concentrated, wouldn't the area covered by the protective magic be as solid as a rock? Thinking of this, Charles' eyes became fervent. Hogwarts, a 1,000-year-old institution, has produced countless geniuses, as well as wizards like Dumbledore and Voldemort. It truly lives up to its reputation. There are so many secrets here. According to the Deep Blue, obtaining the legacies of the 4 founders can significantly reduce the points needed to deduce Hogwarts' protective magic. However, in the original work, apart from Slytherin having the so-called heir, the other colleges don't seem to have similar claims. It seems they have been lost to history and need to be carefully searched for. While Charles was contemplating, the stairs slowly stopped, bringing Charles to the entrance of the Hufflepuff common room. Charles also reined in his thoughts and looked at the handle of the common room door. The legacies of the 4 founders could wait, finding them wouldn't happen overnight. However, after fighting the 3-headed dog and getting it neutered, he was a bit thirsty. According to Cedric Diggory, there seemed to be self-serve magical vinegar here. The next moment, Charles grabbed the handle and said with a troubled expression, "Oh dear, what was the entrance password again? I forgot, my memory is terrible." Then he casually knocked twice. Immediately, magical vinegar with a strong vinegary smell sprayed out from the nozzles on either side of the door. These nozzles seemed to have a targeting function, spraying the vinegar directly towards Charles' mouth. Seeing this, Charles grinned. How thoughtful. Immediately, he opened his mouth and gulped down the vinegar. In his mind, the Deep Blues prompt sounded. Deduction points plus 50. Deduction points plus 50. By the time this wave of vinegar finished spraying, Charles' deduction points had increased by over 1,000. This was already quite a significant amount, and moreover, according to Cedric, the magical vinegar that sprayed out later would be even more concentrated, even capable of spraying out the vinegar brewed by Hufflepuff himself. Charles' eyes showed fervor and greed, and he casually knocked on the door knocker again. Without stopping, a large amount of vinegar sprayed out again. Again. In the end, Charles didn't even bother pretending anymore, too lazy to knock on the door knocker. He directly addressed the door of the Hufflepuff common room. "I'm a bad guy, I'm going into Hufflepuff to cause trouble. Quick, spray out all the magical vinegar from Hufflepuff's era, or I'll do bad things." Then Charles opened his mouth wide and stood directly in front of the spraying nozzles. The next moment, magical vinegar, whose smell alone could make ordinary people feel sour, sprayed out. Charles, however, grinned, revealing a look of wild laughter. As expected of a magical product left from Hufflepuff's era, even if it was just magical vinegar, the magic contained within was extremely concentrated. In a short time, Charles' mind was flooded with the continuous prompts from the Deep Blue. Deduction points plus 1,000. Deduction points plus 1,000. By the time the magical vinegar stopped spraying, Charles' deduction points had soared by nearly 1,000,000 in this short period. Join me on Patreon if you want to request a novel, link in the description. 88. Hufflepuff Legacy? Applying for exemption, Professor McGonagall's fury. After this wave of harvest, Charles finally tapped out the correct rhythm with satisfaction, stopping the Hufflepuff door from continuing to spray vinegar. After all, after the dream of R'lyeh, Charles had learned his lesson and knew not to eat too much in one go. He needed to practice sustainable development. If he drank up Hufflepuff House's vinegar reserves in one night, what would happen if Hufflepuff changed its defense mechanism in the future? But drinking it in moderation like this, considering Hufflepuff House's reserves and the fact that they would continue to brew vinegar periodically, he could drink it for a good while. Next, Charles walked into the Hufflepuff common room. It was already late at night, and coupled with the first day back at school, even the older students were exhausted. There was no one in the common room. Charles walked straight through the door leading to the small kitchen. The small kitchen was still brightly lit. The house elves seemed to be experimenting with recipes, boiling things in pots. Rich aromas wafted out, whetting the appetite. Seeing Charles enter, the house elves were very happy. "Aha, little Hufflepuff wizard, coming for a late-night snack on the first day. You've truly grasped the essence of Hufflepuff House. Come, for ready-made desserts we have creme brulee, macarons, cream rolls. For the main course, we have beef Wellington. The soup will take a little while, it'll be ready soon." Listening to the house elves list the dishes, Charles grinned, then shook his head. "No, I'm not here for these ordinary foods. I heard from the prefects that if you bring your own magical ingredients, you can make magical meals according to the recipes left by Hufflepuff." Hearing Charles' words, the house elves were first stunned, then they all became excited. "You have those rare ingredients? If you can get the ingredients, of course we can process them. But little wizard, the ingredients that Hufflepuff specifically developed into magical meal recipes are all very precious and rare. After all, a big motivation for Hufflepuff to practice magic diligently was to eat more delicious food. What ingredients do you have?" The next moment, Charles took out bloody rod-shaped and spherical objects from his undetectable extension charm pouch and tossed them to the house elves. These house elves were indeed masters of culinary arts. They recognized the origin of the ingredients at a glance. 3-headed dog penis, and 3-headed dog testicles. You can actually get this? Hufflepuff did indeed specifically research 3-headed dog recipes back in Greece. There are records of making nourishing magical soup with 3-headed dog penis and testicles. But it's a pity. According to Hufflepuff's records, if you could boil the soup with dragon blood and 3-headed dog ingredients together, the taste would be even more wonderful. And the magical power of the two dangerous magical creatures blending and stimulating each other would be more flavorful than using a single ingredient. Hearing the house elf's words, a strange look appeared in Charles' eyes. Dragon blood? He actually had it. When he bled the vampire earl in Nocturne Alley before, he had collected several swimming pools worth of dragon blood. At the time, he thought he didn't lack too many points for now, so he might as well keep it as material for future potions or alchemy. He didn't expect it to be used in Hufflepuff's recipe first. Immediately, Charles took out a large glass bottle of dragon blood and handed it to the house elves. Is this much dragon blood enough? Seeing the dragon blood, the house elves, who had been a little regretful that they couldn't maximize the effect of the three-headed dog ingredients, immediately became excited. Enough, enough. With so many penises and testicles, it's enough to make a large pot of nourishing soup. But with so much nourishing soup, little wizard, can you drink it all? They say the nourishing effect is incredibly good. In response, Charles smiled slightly, indicating that the elves just needed to make the soup, and he could handle however much they made. Then, the house elves quickly processed the various ingredients. After throwing the main ingredients like the three-headed dog parts and dragon blood into the soup pot, they added various plants and seasonings that Charles had never heard of. According to the house elves, some of these were magical plants and magical seasonings, which would be quite valuable if sold outside. However, because Hufflepuff House was best at cultivating herbs, they were very common here. And since Charles had already provided the most important main ingredients, providing these few auxiliary ingredients was naturally no problem for them. After all, even in the Hufflepuff small kitchen, there weren't many opportunities to recreate the high-end magical meals from Hufflepuff's recipes. Charles watched with interest as the house elves processed the ingredients and boiled the magical soup. Gradually, a look of surprise and uncertainty appeared on his face. He could feel that the two different types of magical power from the dragon blood and three-headed dog ingredients were actually starting to blend under the techniques passed down by Hufflepuff himself. Being able to harmonize the magical power of two dangerous magical creatures was definitely not easy. Just then, Deep Blue's prompt sounded in Charles' mind again. Host has acquired knowledge available for deduction. Hufflepuff's Magical Cookbook, Three-Headed Dog Chapter. Continue the deduction to obtain the complete Hufflepuff legacy. The initial deduction requires 200,000 deduction points. Proceed with deduction. Charles was stunned when he heard this prompt. He never expected that the legacy of the four founders he had heard about from Hogwarts defensive magic would be found so quickly. Hufflepuff's legacy, it turned out, had long been left in the house, hidden within the magical recipes she left behind. From the fact that this magical recipe could easily allow house elves to blend the magic of dragons and three-headed dogs, it seemed that Hufflepuff's true legacy was related to blending multiple types of magic and stimulating them to a higher level. Thinking of this, Charles also thought of Hufflepuff's admission philosophy. The other three houses had distinct requirements for students, but Hufflepuff House accepted anyone. Regardless of a young wizard's traits, if they didn't fit the characteristics of the other three houses, Hufflepuff would take them in. This feeling revealed was perfectly consistent with Hufflepuff's legacy. The house founded by Hufflepuff adhered to a philosophy identical to Hufflepuff's magic. It could accommodate students of any personality or magical ability, and allow them to stimulate each other, promote each other, and reach a more perfect level. Charles' eyes showed shock. Seeing a small part to know the whole, Hufflepuff's own magical attainment was probably extraordinarily high. It was possible that Dumbledore might not even be able to match Hufflepuff herself. It was no wonder Dumbledore's title wasn't the strongest wizard in history, but limited to this century. It seemed that before this, there had indeed been wizards widely acknowledged to be stronger than Dumbledore in history. At least the four founders were at least at Dumbledore's level, and might even have gone further. This raised another question for Charles. If so, why did the four founders establish Hogwarts as a wizarding sanctuary and place of legacy? In the history of magic, it was said to escape the pursuit of Muggles. But Muggles at that time didn't even have thermal weapons, so how could they pursue a group of wizards protected by the four founders? Even the four founders left their legacies here, as if they were prepared to die. Layers of doubt spread in Charles' heart. Just as he was deep in thought, a rich, fragrant aroma that went straight to his head wafted over, interrupting Charles' thoughts. In the house elf's magical cauldron, a large pot of soup was finished simmering. The aroma Charles smelled was coming from it. Charles took a deep breath. Those ancient doubts could wait for a bit. He'd drink the soup first. The house elves served Charles a bowl, and Charles drank the steaming soup in one gulp. The next moment, Deep Blue's prompt sounded. Deduction points plus 2,000. Charles' eyes lit up. One bowl of soup added 2,000 points. This pot could hold at least 30 bowls, which was over 60,000 points. This was only a part of the ingredients from the three-headed dog and dragon. After being blended according to Hufflepuff's magical recipe, it actually produced such a change. Thinking of this, Charles felt a little regretful. If he had known, he would have endured using those materials before and saved them to be processed in Hufflepuff's small kitchen. Perhaps the gains could have been greatly increased. However, thinking that there would be plenty of opportunities to get various materials at Hogwarts later, the regret in Charles' heart dissipated, and he continued to drink the soup bowl after bowl without lifting his head. At this moment, the door to the small kitchen was pushed open again. Cedric Diggory walked in wearing pajamas. It seemed he had triggered the Hufflepuff wizard's instinct to seek food in the small kitchen while half asleep. And after smelling the aroma of the three-headed dog soup, Cedric instantly sobered up, his eyes fixed on the soup pot in front of Charles, and he swallowed with a gulp. "Charles, what kind of soup are you drinking?" Charles glanced at Cedric. Although a bowl of soup was worth 2,000 deduction points, Charles wasn't short of that much, so sharing a bowl wasn't out of the question. Cedric was a relatively steady person with good character, not a boisterous little kid, and Charles found him quite agreeable. Moreover, because Cedric had mentioned the defense mechanism of the Hufflepuff common room, Charles had just drunk the magical vinegar and earned over 1,000,000 points, so giving him a bowl of soup was fine. However, a half-smile appeared on Charles' lips. "Cedric, do you have a girlfriend? This soup is very nourishing, don't drink too much." Cedric's face turned red. "Of course I have a girlfriend, but you, Charles, you just started school, you can't possibly be dating a young witch, right? If a little wizard like you can drink so much, why can't I?" Immediately, Cedric thanked Charles, carefully took the soup bowl, and took a sip. In an instant, as the delicious aroma hit his head, Cedric couldn't care about anything else and began to gulp it down. After finishing the bowl of soup, Cedric's face suddenly turned bright red, feeling a fire burning in his lower abdomen. His expression became extremely colorful, and he couldn't help but blurt out a curse. "Holy crap, this soup is too potent, what did you put in it?" Then, Cedric looked at Charles' normal expression, his eyes filled with admiration. "After drinking so much, Charles, you can still handle this? Awesome. But are you sure you're really okay? Can you sleep when you go back? Don't tell me you're going to get a morning erection in class tomorrow." Charles smiled slightly. "You're too weak, you can't handle the nourishment. You should hurry back and find a way to deal with it. As for my class problem, I never plan to attend every class anyway." Cedric was stunned at first, then gave a thumbs up. "Planning to skip class on the first day? Impressive." Charles showed a brilliant smile. "Skip class? Is it possible that I don't need to skip class, and can openly not attend?" This time, Cedric was completely stunned and humbly asked. "I'm already a prefect, how come I didn't know there was such a move?" Charles said leisurely. "Just tell the professor directly that the content in the large classes and textbooks is too basic and not suitable for me, and apply to not attend classes. Wouldn't that work?" Cedric stood there dumbfounded for a long time. "But your first class tomorrow is Professor McGonagall's Transfiguration class." Before he finished speaking, Charles' smile became even brighter. "Isn't that perfect? Transfiguration is what I'm best at, there's no need to attend class anymore." Immediately, Charles drained the remaining soup in the pot and turned to leave the small kitchen. Cedric looked at Charles' back and gasped, taking a deep breath. "That cool?" Then, Cedric's expression couldn't help but become excited. Hufflepuff House had always been criticized by the other houses as a gathering place for mediocrities. Cedric had also relied on his talent and unremitting efforts to gradually gain recognition and be considered one of the best students at Hogwarts. He had always wanted to wash away the impression Hufflepuff House left on others, proving that the little Badgers were just down-to-earth and disliked conflict, but it absolutely didn't mean they were mediocre. If Charles could really accomplish what he said tomorrow, it would definitely be a scene never before seen in Hogwarts' 100-year history. By then, who would dare say Hufflepuff House was mediocre? Even Ravenclaw, known for being extremely intelligent, who among them could directly get Professor McGonagall to exempt them from class? Although such a move seemed impossible to others, inexplicably, Cedric felt an unparalleled confidence in Charles. It was as if such a thing was just a simple matter. Cedric smiled. "It seems this time, our Hufflepuff is really going to have a monstrous genius." The next morning, the first-year new students who woke up from their sleep were bumping around the castle like headless flies. Most of the new students had long forgotten the rules of the stairs that the prefects had told them about yesterday, and could only keep asking older students for directions. But at this moment, a figure attracted everyone's attention. Even the older students who were already familiar with the castle's paths stared dumbfounded at this figure, because compared to them who still had to find their way, this little wizard didn't even need to move, and the stairs in the castle were like escalators. directly sending him all the way up. In an instant, everyone was dumbfounded. No, what's going on? There are elevators in the castle. Why does he get to ride it, but we don't? In Slytherin House, Draco Malfoy, who had always been proud of his father's position as a school governor, was also stunned. This was the flashy entrance he wanted. He couldn't help but exclaim, "What's happening? My father is a school governor, why can't I ride a staircase like that?" But the staircases of Hogwarts didn't pay him any mind at all. What kind of joke was this? School governor? There had been thousands of school governors in Hogwarts history, but a little monster like Charles who even gnawed on the stairs was the first. They couldn't afford to offend him. At this moment, Charles had arrived at the Transfiguration classroom door. Some Hufflepuff and Ravenclaw students had also arrived here. Many girls were looking at a tabby cat on the podium with curious eyes. That was naturally Professor McGonagall. She usually used her animagus form to give the young wizards their first lesson, to spark their curiosity and offer transfiguration. Charles stepped towards Professor McGonagall. What he said to Cedric was naturally not bragging. With his level, let alone the first-year teaching at Hogwarts, even the seventh-year teaching was useless to him. Attending classes with these young wizards was just another form of playing house, a waste of time. As for essays and homework, even more of a joke. With the time spent on homework, eating a couple more bites was better than anything. Surely no one actually liked doing homework and preparing for exams with little kids, right? Adults naturally had more efficient ways to plan their time. After arriving in front of Professor McGonagall, Charles said frankly, "Professor McGonagall, I believe my level doesn't require me to waste time in large classes, so I request to not attend Transfiguration large classes in the future, nor submit homework or essays. Of course, I will still attend the final assessment. If I don't get full marks, you can revoke this privilege." Hearing Charles' words, Professor McGonagall transformed back into her wizard form amidst the young wizard's exclamations. She looked at Charles with a serious expression, her eyes narrowed, seemingly contemplating. "Given the transfiguration proficiency you've shown before, you indeed don't need to participate in the first-year courses. How about this, I'll arrange for you to join the third-year classes. How does that sound?" Charles shook his head. "No, Professor, what I mean is, not just exempting me from the first-year transfiguration large classes, but exempting me from all transfiguration courses during these 7 years at Hogwarts. So, please also exempt me from joining other classes. I really don't have the time." Professor McGonagall's expression was no longer serious, but almost stern. "Charles Evans, do you understand what you're saying? You think your transfiguration has reached a level where Hogwarts can't teach you anymore?" The next moment, Charles drew his wand and said seriously, "I never do things that waste time. Attending large classes is wasting my time, and I have no intention of arguing with you, Professor. If you have any doubts, Professor, why don't we see the truth in Transfiguration?" Professor McGonagall took a deep breath, her expression extremely angry, and slowly drew her wand. "Charles Evans, in my many years of teaching at Hogwarts, I swear you are the most arrogant student I have ever seen. Then let me see, how far has your transfiguration reached?" "There are still 2.5k words left to reach 10,000 words, which will be added after midnight. There should also be additional updates after reaching 10,000 words. Also, to boost average subscriptions and recommendations, the following chapters may be in a combined format. I hope everyone can understand. Join me on Patreon if you want to request a novel, link in the description." 89. Professor McGonagall's admiration, the strongest genius in history. At this moment, the Hufflepuff and Ravenclaw little wizards in the classroom were all stunned. They couldn't believe that someone would apply to be exempted from the next 7 years of classes on the very first day. This was too explosive. The little wizards looked at Professor McGonagall, who had drawn her wand and was visibly enraged, not daring to breathe. Meanwhile, Charles faced Professor McGonagall and smiled slightly when he heard her call him the most arrogant student at Hogwarts. "Saying something you can't do, that's called arrogance. Someone like me, Professor, you should call me a genius." Professor McGonagall stared intently at Charles, a hint of regret in her heart. She felt that perhaps her praise for Charles' transfiguration the day before the sorting ceremony had made this little wizard too complacent, leading to the arrogant idea that he couldn't learn anything in Hogwarts classes. Then, Professor McGonagall took a deep breath. Since it was her mistake, she would rectify it herself. She wanted Charles to realize how absurd the idea of applying for class exemption was. Immediately, Professor McGonagall waved her wand. The chalk in the classroom suddenly stretched and deformed like clay, turning into ropes, the most useful tool in transfiguration battles, and wrapped around Charles. Charles smiled slightly and also waved his mithril wand. He similarly transformed the remaining chalk, turning them into sharp scissors that accurately found the ropes Professor McGonagall had transformed and fiercely cut them off. In a moment, Professor McGonagall's attempt to tie up Charles was thwarted. Instead, Charles continued to wave his wand, and sharp scissors approached Professor McGonagall. Seeing this, the little wizards in the classroom couldn't suppress their fear and screamed. Professor McGonagall's pupils also contracted slightly. When she had just made her move, she hadn't used her full strength, but the transfiguration born of anger was definitely not something an ordinary wizard could handle. Even older Hogwarts students would be instantly tied up. But Charles had managed to create a counter-transformation so quickly, and in terms of speed and precision, it was impeccable. Then, facing the scissors attacking her, Professor McGonagall had no time to think further and waved her wand again. The classroom floor began to deform, and earth and bricks rose, forming a solid wall in front of Professor McGonagall, blocking all the incoming scissors. Excitement also showed in Charles' eyes. This was the level of a transfiguration master. Before, when he dealt with those ordinary dark wizards, even without using the dust-free land, he could easily slaughter them just by relying on transfiguration. The three-headed dog was just like that. By changing the terrain, it was easy to restrain this beast that only knew how to use brute force. This transfiguration duel with Professor McGonagall was the most evenly matched battle Charles had had since his transmigration. He no longer held back, waving his mithril wand repeatedly. The block scissors immediately turned into hissing venomous snakes, climbing up the earth wall and spreading towards Professor McGonagall. Professor McGonagall was also calm and composed. With a flick of her wand, the earth wall disintegrated, and the falling chunks of earth turned into vultures, fiercely tearing the snakes into pieces. At the same time, several vultures flew towards Charles, their sharp claws reaching for his shoulder. Charles smiled, casually tossed a copper coin, and turned it into a large metal net, netting all the vultures in midair. Professor McGonagall took a deep breath, about to speak. Charles, who was in high spirits, used even more transformations. With waves of his wand, miraculous transfiguration techniques followed one after another. The desks, books, teaching tools, and even the earth and walls in the classroom all transformed under Charles' magic, turning into lifelike animals that surrounded Professor McGonagall. After all, the area of transfiguration that Charles had delved into the deepest was oxiotransfiguration, and the feedback from oxiotransfiguration had led to significant progress in Charles' basic transfiguration skills related to animal transformations. Without exposing magical oxio, this was the highest level of Charles' transfiguration mastery. Lions roared, wolves howled, golden eagles circled. Seeing this scene, Professor McGonagall opposite him was filled with shock and admiration. She was also completely serious now. Compared to Charles' specialization in transfiguration, Professor McGonagall was much more balanced and comprehensive. Being skilled in oxiotransfiguration also meant she was equally skilled in animal transformations. But at the same time, she was also proficient in summoning, banishing, and other areas. For a moment, Professor McGonagall also summoned many animals. At the same time, accompanied by the waving of her wand and low incantations, there were also flames and lightning strikes related to summoning transfiguration. From time to time, she also waved her wand and used counter-summoning to dispel the transformations Charles had used. The little wizards who had retreated outside the classroom looked at the scene inside, their faces full of disbelief. Is Charles evenly matched with Professor McGonagall in the field of transfiguration? Is there really a first-year wizard among them? I feel like gods are fighting. No, everyone's here to study. How is Charles so fierce? He can't really graduate as soon as he enrolls and not have to attend classes from now on, right? Just as the young wizards were left stunned and bewildered, the smoke and dust in the classroom gradually dispersed. Charles was currently entangled by a rope conjured by Professor McGonagall, but he easily broke free with a slight effort. He smiled. Professor, you won, but is my performance enough to be exempted from classes? Across from Charles, Professor McGonagall's expression was extremely complex, containing bewilderment, shock, loss, and even a hint of questioning her life. Just now, she had truly used all her skills, employing techniques from various fields of transfiguration, just to suppress Charles' transfiguration. But she had a feeling that Charles still had transfiguration techniques he hadn't revealed. If Charles had gone all out, the outcome of this transfiguration duel would truly be hard to say. She had been immersed in the field of transfiguration for so long, winning the annual Most Outstanding Young Witch Award right after graduating from Hogwarts, and was now a renowned transfiguration master in the magical world. Yet, in the field of transfiguration, she was evenly matched with a first-year student. Thinking about how she had previously said she would make Charles realize how absurd his words were, Professor McGonagall felt a burning sensation on her face. With Charles' level, if he were to also display outstanding achievements in a specific branch, the title of Transfiguration Master would be well deserved. How could she possibly make a Transfiguration Master attend classes with a group of young wizards? Perhaps it wasn't Charles who was arrogant and conceited, but herself. Coming back to her senses, Professor McGonagall took a deep breath and apologized to Charles. Charles, I apologize for my prejudice. Indeed, your request for class exemption is not arrogant, but a matter of course. At Hogwarts, besides Dumbledore, who is qualified to teach you in the field of transfiguration, no one else is qualified to teach you, not even I. Charles, however, waved his hand. Professor McGonagall is being too modest, I lost after all. How about this, in the field of transfiguration, we can exchange ideas more often when we have time. There are still many things I need to learn from you. Charles' words were not empty flattery. Just now, Professor McGonagall's full effort had indeed allowed Charles to gather a lot of material from various branches of transfiguration. If he needed to deduce in these branches later, it could save a lot of points. Professor McGonagall was a transfiguration master after all, and her experience and knowledge were treasures that could not be obtained by simply flipping through papers. From her, Charles felt he could still gather quite a bit of transfiguration material, and Charles' words made Professor McGonagall show excitement. She felt that she had been stuck in the field of transfiguration for a long time, and if she could exchange ideas with a young, creative, and talented wizard like Charles, it would greatly benefit her own breakthroughs in transfiguration. Immediately, Professor McGonagall also nodded in agreement. It is also my honor to exchange ideas with a genius who can be called a transfiguration master. Also, although it may not quite match the astonishing transfiguration you displayed, and may seem a bit childish and ridiculous to you, this is the most points I can add at once. 200 points to Hufflepuff, for Master Charles Evans's master-level transfiguration. Then, Charles gave a slight bow and, striking while the iron was hot, began discussing issues related to animagus transfiguration with Professor McGonagall. Although he already possessed a mastery of animagus transfiguration that surpassed the entire magical world, having even completed the magical animagus, a transfiguration master specializing in animagus like Professor McGonagall might have some highly insightful research results or magical information. If Deep Blue could obtain Hogwarts defensive magic knowledge from the Marauder's map, who knew if he could get something from Professor McGonagall's collection? Perhaps this could become the material for Charles to further deduce the magical animagus. After collecting the 3 types of magical animagus, Charles would have to start considering further deduction of this transfiguration. According to Deep Blue, the next step would be to freely transform into magical creatures, and even into those beings from myths and legends that have long since disappeared, and master their corresponding characteristics. The points required for this would not be limited to 1,000,000. Every point saved was a point gained. As for the field Charles began discussing, Professor McGonagall was also immersed in it. For a scholar of her level, having appeared to exchange ideas with was simply too rare. Dumbledore followed the summoning branch, which was not the same as Professor McGonagall's branch, so the guidance he could give her was limited. Now that she had met Charles, Professor McGonagall was unwilling to miss the opportunity. Right there and then, the two began discussing and exchanging ideas in the classroom. Meanwhile, the remaining Hufflepuff and Ravenclaw young wizards looked at each other. So what do we do? What else can we do? Do you dare to go up and interrupt? Forget it, let's look at the textbooks and teach ourselves. Actually, seeing Charles master transfiguration to this extent in his first year, maybe transfiguration isn't that difficult after all. A Ravenclaw little wizard who considered himself smart took out his wand and confidently waved it at a pen in his hand. Transform. The other little wizards were also excited, practicing with longing for transfiguration, but even by the time class ended, no one had been able to make any changes. At this moment, having deeply understood the difficulty of transfiguration, they looked at Charles, who was still talking with Professor McGonagall, their shock and awe truly indescribable. It turned out that the difficulty of transfiguration wasn't exaggerated, rather, Charles' talent was truly astonishingly powerful, not on the same level as theirs at all. At this time, as the class bell rang, Charles and Professor McGonagall's discussion was interrupted. Professor McGonagall's eyes showed a look of not having had enough. Charles' many insights into Oxio-transfiguration were truly too inspiring for her. Just this short exchange made Professor McGonagall feel that she had gained some new understanding of transfiguration. Charles also looked very satisfied. Just now, Professor McGonagall mentioned a point from an ancient transfiguration book, which triggered a prompt from Deep Blue, saying that Charles had obtained advanced material in the field of oxiotransfiguration, which could reduce some of the points needed to continue deducing oxio. For Charles, exchanging his existing knowledge for these materials was the most cost-effective thing he could do. Communicating with Professor McGonagall a few more times might allow him to access more Transfiguration Masters through Professor McGonagall's circle, thus potentially obtaining more advanced materials. In Charles' opinion, this was much wiser than foolishly hiding all his strength and attending classes with the little wizards. At this time, Professor McGonagall said to Charles, "If you have any ideas, feel free to come to my office to discuss them." Charles nodded in thanks. Professor McGonagall asked another question. "Oh, right, Charles, what's your next class?" Charles replied, "Charms." Professor McGonagall hesitated and asked, "This course, are you also?" Charles smiled slightly. "That's right, I don't think I need to attend the large class either. Discussing it individually with Professor Phileas Flitwick might be more effective for me." Then, Charles walked out of the classroom, and on Professor McGonagall's face, for the first time, a hint of relief and secret joy appeared. That's great. If she were the only one applying for exemption, even Professor McGonagall would feel a little awkward. But now, there's another victim? Professor McGonagall's mouth curved into a strange smile. Phileas, it's your turn to be shocked by this possibly strongest genius in history." Meanwhile, the Hogwarts students, who had just finished their first class, were hurrying through the corridors. The first-year students were especially excited, chattering about the wonders of magic. Of course, this also included the longing to earn points for the House Cup. Hermione was walking through the corridor with Harry and Ron, while also regretting a mistake she made on a question in the previous class. "Lack of sleep, it must have been lack of sleep yesterday that caused my mind to get stuck. Otherwise, I would have been able to answer this question more comprehensively, and it wouldn't have been 3 points, but possibly 5 points for Gryffindor." Harry and Ron's mouths twitched twice. Hermione was a true academic, answering almost all the questions the professor asked in class just now. The two of them, being academic underachievers, could only contribute bewildered looks from the side. After one class, Hermione had probably added nearly 10 points to Gryffindor. Ron suddenly thought of Charles, who had shone brightly yesterday, and said with a hint of sourness, "I wonder how many points that Charles Evans, who's been praised to the skies, can add to Hufflepuff." "If you ask me, Hermione, you're too modest. If you put all the effort you spend reading so many books into practicing Transfiguration, you'd definitely be stronger than Charles when you started school." Hermione gave a wry smile. "Transfiguration is known as the most profound subject, how can it be that easy?" To be praised by Professor McGonagall, Charles' level of transfiguration is imaginable. Ron was still unconvinced, but just then, the three of them passed by the location of the House Cup. They saw a crowd gathered around the hourglasses that displayed the scores of each house, all looking as if they were questioning reality. When they got closer, they saw that Hufflepuff's score was so high it could easily beat the other houses combined. Next to them, older students looked completely bewildered. "It's only the first day of school, and Hufflepuff already has 200 points. Are you kidding me?" In previous years, Hufflepuff might not even reach 200 points by the middle of the school year. What's going on today? Did the scoring magic malfunction? Just then, the first-year Hufflepuff and Ravenclaw young wizards who had just come out of the Transfiguration classroom answered their questions. As they recounted the events, the feeling of questioning reality grew stronger for everyone present. "What? You're saying Charles Evans directly applied to Professor McGonagall for an exemption from classes and dueled Professor McGonagall in Transfiguration?" He was evenly matched with Professor McGonagall in Transfiguration, only slightly inferior before being defeated, but Professor McGonagall personally acknowledged that he possessed the skill level of a Transfiguration Master, and then he engaged in academic exchange with Professor McGonagall. "Damn, can you stop making such jokes?" But when all the first-year Hufflepuffs and Ravenclaws said the same thing, and even swore they should go to the Transfiguration classroom to see the aftermath of the battle, everyone swallowed hard. Harry, Ron, and Hermione were also stunned. A first-year student evenly matched with a professor in their specialized field, acknowledged as having the skill level of a Transfiguration Master. They felt like they were listening to some legendary tale. After a long while, Hermione finally came back to her senses, a wry smile appearing on her face. "That familiar feeling is back. Every time I'm crushed by Charles in a competition, it feels like this. I thought I was already excellent among my peers, but Charles always compares himself to professional standards, transcending age. This time, it's too exaggerated." Hermione, who had already read a history of magic once, could guarantee that there had never been a student in history who possessed master-level transfiguration skills upon entering school. Even Dumbledore was far from that level when he started. In other words, Charles Evans, he might be the most talented being in Hogwarts history. Hermione's words were like a clap of thunder in everyone's minds. Hogwarts has a 1,000-year history. There are likely more than a handful of geniuses at Dumbledore's level, and other excellent wizards are as numerous as fish crossing a river. Now Hermione was saying that Charles Evans was the greatest genius in history, even stronger than Dumbledore was back then. Subconsciously, some people wanted to deny this. But before they could speak, several older Ravenclaw students rushed out of the Charms classroom, their faces filled with shock. Charles Evans, the first-year wizard from Hufflepuff, he's going to duel head of House Flitwick in Charms. The next moment, everyone present exploded, scrambling towards the Charms classroom. Hermione ran among the crowd, her head spinning, feeling as if she were in a dream, her heart pounding wildly. She felt that everyone present might witness history today. Charles Evans, he's not going to graduate the moment he starts, is he? Join me on Patreon if you want to request a novel, link in the description. 90. The shock of self-created spells. The dual title, King of Lumos. At this moment, Ron, who was running through the crowd, also had a fluctuating expression. From the first time he met Charles, he hadn't had a good impression of him. Afterward, he often told Harry and Hermione behind Charles' back that Charles might not be that amazing at all. Now, Charles had achieved results that even Professor McGonagall, the head of Gryffindor, was amazed by. And this wasn't even the end? Ron subconsciously comforted himself. He might just be good at transfiguration, but he can't possibly have such deep attainments in charms as well. Besides, even though Professor Flitwick is small, I heard he's a dueling champion. A first-year wizard dueling Professor Flitwick in charms will definitely be defeated in just a few moves. But beside Ron, Hermione, even though she was running out of breath, her tone was still exceptionally certain. Impossible. I know Charles Evans too well. The first time I met him, I also thought what he wanted to do was impossible, but the facts have proven that he has succeeded every single time. So I am certain that he never does anything he isn't confident about. I believe this even more firmly than I believe I am smart. For him, nothing is impossible. He is always creating miracles. Ron's face turned a few shades greener. Miracles? There is only one miracle in the wizarding world, and that is Harry. Harry, who was beside them, felt a wave of awkwardness and quickly changed the subject. Look, there are so many people gathered around the charms classroom ahead. Ron and Hermione looked ahead and indeed found that the area was packed tightly. Just as latecomers like them were worried about not being able to see what was happening in the classroom, the desks, chairs, and benches in the classroom began to fly up one by one, stacking layer upon layer, and under the effect of transfiguration, they created a platform for people to stand on. On one side of the platform was Charles, holding his mithril wand, and on the other side was Professor Flitwick, the head of Ravenclaw. Professor Flitwick's eyes showed a look of admiration. Beautiful transfiguration. No wonder I heard from the students that Minerva actually approved your request for exemption. Charles also praised. Professor's levitation charm is also quite spectacular. Such a large range, multi-target levitation, and all floating at the same height, amazing. Professor Flitwick chuckled. Alright, Charles, let's stop flattering each other here. I admit your transfiguration is impressive, but you are currently applying to me for exemption from charms class. I won't be looking at your transfiguration skills. You need to show me how well you've mastered charms. Transfiguration is not within my assessment scope. A fervent look gradually appeared in Charles' eyes as well. I also want to experience how far Professor Flitwick, as the charms professor at Hogwarts and reportedly a dueling champion for over a dozen sessions, can take charms. Charles' words were not empty boasts. Professor Flitwick, who had little screen time in the original work, was definitely in the first tier below the level of Dumbledore, Voldemort, and Grindelwald. Dolohov, the elite Death Eater who could kill Lupin in a duel, was easily defeated by Professor Flitwick in a duel, showing that his strength was far above that of Lupin, a core member of the Order of the Phoenix. The Transfiguration duel with Professor McGonagall had provided Charles with a lot of transfiguration material. However, compared to Transfiguration, Charms was undoubtedly much weaker for Charles. Apart from having superb attainments in the Lumos spell and a few sacred spells, he had only dabbled in other spells. Getting a wave of material from Professor Flitwick would greatly reduce the point consumption when Charles subsequently deduced these spells. At this point, Professor Flitwick and Charles exchanged dueling bows, and then the professor motioned for Charles to make the first move. Charles didn't hesitate and immediately cast the stunning spell he had learned from a spellbook. Then, his mithril wand traced a beautiful arc, and another disarming charm followed. With his attainments in the banishing charm and the patroness charm, although he couldn't completely replicate them, by analogy, these low-level spells were truly not difficult at all, and he used them as standard as a textbook. Professor Flitwick said in surprise, "Not bad, standard incantations. Many upper-year students aren't as good as you. No wonder you dared to apply for exemption from charms class." While speaking, it didn't affect Professor Flitwick's casting at all. He waved his wand without chanting an incantation, but an invisible wall of bronze appeared, easily blocking Charles' 2 spells. Charles' pupils slightly contracted. Silent casting? He knew this technique too, but it was limited to the spells that Deep Blue had deduced. And silent casting, as well as the more advanced wandless casting, had a drawback. While faster without incantations and a wand, the power of the spells would decrease significantly. Yet, even so, Professor Flitwick's shield charm easily blocked the 2 spells Charles cast. That could only mean that in Professor Flitwick's view, the level of skill displayed by Charles' 2 spells was easy for him to handle. Indeed, Professor Flitwick then said with a smile, "But if that's all there is to it, then the matter of skipping classes is out of the question, Charles." Immediately, he waved his wand repeatedly, and spells rained down on Charles like a storm. Since there wasn't even the sound of an incantation, Charles had no way of knowing what these spells were. What's more, Professor Flitwick's casting speed was too fast. The spells came one after another, and even if Charles could identify them, he wouldn't have time to cast the corresponding counterspells for all of them. Fortunately, Charles' mastery of the shield charm was also profound. After all, he had already deduced the dragon armor spell, so the ordinary shield charm was naturally even more powerful. Accompanied by equally silent casting, an invisible wall, even more resilient than the one Professor Flitwick cast, stood firm, blocking the incoming spells. This time, Professor Flitwick was clearly surprised. Silent shield charm? And the strength is so high? Well done, Charles, this move of yours is truly amazing. 99% of the Aurors in the Ministry of Magic are not as good as you. Then, a serious expression appeared on his face, along with a hint of excitement. Since that's the case, I can't underestimate you. I'll have to get serious. Come, let me see where your limit is. Then, Professor Flitwick stopped talking completely. On the dueling platform, there was only the sound of his rapid incantations. Spells that were clearly much more powerful than before whistled in, causing Charles' shield charm to spark. Under such dense spell attacks, the silent shield charm was clearly no longer enough. Charles concentrated and held his breath, letting out a low shout. Protego. A thicker barrier rose. But under Professor Flitwick's onslaught, which was like a magical machine gun, it wasn't long before this shield charm also began to falter. Charles watched these colorful spells being gradually pushed back into the corner of the dueling platform. However, there was no sign of anxiety on his face. Instead, there was a look of joy. Because as Professor Flitwick cast spells, Deep Blue's notification sounds kept ringing out like a screen refresh. Host has obtained stunning spell material, subsequent deduction required points decreased. Host has obtained disintegration spell material, subsequent deduction required points decreased. Charles simply stopped counterattacking and focused on casting the shield charm, wanting to see how many more tricks Professor Flitwick had up his sleeve. On the surface, this naturally put him at a complete disadvantage. The Hogwarts students who had come to watch the duel couldn't help but be mesmerized by Professor Flitwick's magical performance. Professor Flitwick is really strong. These spells are almost all different, and the casting speed is too fast. The spell power is also terrifying. Charles only attacked twice at the beginning, and now he's completely suppressed, only able to use the shield charm to defend, with no room to breathe. The young wizards of Ravenclaw were proud of this. After all, this was the head of their Ravenclaw house. Ron in the crowd quietly breathed a sigh of relief and whispered to Hermione and Harry beside him. "See, I told you, Charles should only be good at transfiguration. Isn't his application to skip charms class about to fail? Hermione, Charles isn't as amazing as you said." Hermione, however, remained silent, always looking at Charles with a determined gaze. At this moment, Professor Flitwick, who had completely gained the upper hand, joked. "Charles, you use the shield charm beautifully. But your other spells are too ordinary. Being so lopsided means you can't skip my class. But just for your shield charm, I'm going to award Hufflepuff 100 points." Charles, however, smiled. From just now until now, he had collected dozens of materials from Professor Flitwick. Although he might not use all of these spells, the value was immeasurable when calculated this way. He had truly had a blast. Facing Professor Flitwick's teasing, Charles admitted, "Indeed, my other spells are quite ordinary. I haven't specifically practiced them much. I just glanced at them in spellbooks and used them casually. There aren't many spells I've specifically studied. The shield charm is one, and another one I can use is the Lumos charm. Professor, please guide me. Hearing Charles' words, not only Professor Flitwick but also the Hogwarts students watching were stunned. Then, a wave of sourness rose in their hearts. Most of the people present couldn't even cast the stunning spell and disarming charm that Charles had just used. They weren't even written in the textbooks. Yet, Charles said he just casually used them after glancing at them in spellbooks, without studying them carefully at all. Is this the difference between people? However, upon hearing Charles say that another spell he was good at was the Lumos charm, everyone felt a wave of confusion. The Lumos charm was one of the most basic spells. Even first-year young wizards who had just attended their first charms class could already successfully cast the Lumos charm. Such a spell, and Charles said he had specifically studied it? What was there to study about it? And he even wanted Professor Flitwick to guide him? Professor Flitwick also felt curious. He reduced the frequency of his spell attacks slightly and motioned for Charles to show him his Lumos charm. The next moment, Charles raised his hand, and a dazzling light, like the sun, poured out from the tip of his wand. This was the flash spell he hadn't used for a long time. When the flash spell was first developed, although it was indeed like a flashbang, it was far less dazzling than it was now. However, with the subsequent development of the Lumos charm, spells like Eternal Blazing Sun, Blade of Night, and Sunless Sun appeared, and the flash spell also became stronger and stronger through feedback. More importantly, Charles' recent mental transformation brought a huge boost to basic spells like the flash spell. All these factors combined created this dazzling light, like the sun. Except for Professor Flitwick, who reacted extremely quickly and immediately created a dark area, everyone's vision inside and outside the charms classroom instantly went white. They couldn't see what was happening at all. Professor Flitwick couldn't help but praise repeatedly. Is this a new spell derived from the Lumos charm? To be able to radiate the light of the Lumos charm to such an extent and create a flashing effect. Charles, your mastery of the Lumos charm is truly profound. At this moment, a strange smile appeared at the corner of Charles' mouth. Is that so? Then perhaps your praise is a bit premature, Professor. Immediately, his mithril wand in his hand waved again, and the laser spell followed. The thin beam of light contained the power to cut through metal and stone, and it was also strengthened by Charles' mental transformation. Dense beams of laser condensed into a net, covering Professor Flitwick. Wherever the laser net passed, the transformed arena floor was cut into neat squares, making Professor Flitwick's expression solemn. He waved his wand like the wind and let out a low roar. Protego, triple casting. The next moment, 3 invisible barriers instantly appeared in front of Professor Flitwick, blocking the laser spell that Charles had unleashed. At this point, Professor Flitwick was more than just praising. The astonishment on his face was undeniable. He had thought that modifying the Lumos charm into the flash spell was Charles' limit. Just seeing this move, and considering Charles' previous mastery of the shield charm, Professor Flitwick could actually have agreed to exempt Charles from attending classes. But he never expected that the flash spell was not Charles' limit, and that he had even developed a damaging spell on top of that. The magnitude of this leap was truly immeasurable. Just based on this achievement, Professor Flitwick felt it was enough to publish a top-tier paper in the wizarding world. Seeing that Charles seemed eager to continue, Professor Flitwick quickly called a halt. All right, let's stop here," he said half-jokingly. "If we keep fighting like this, I'm afraid you'll just pull out a sun spell. Let's not accidentally injure the nearby students. Charles, you don't need to attend my class. If you have any questions about charms, just come to my office to discuss them." At this moment, the young Hogwarts wizards beside them had just recovered from their vision being completely white from the flash spell. Hearing what Professor Flitwick said, everyone's eyes showed confusion. What happened? Just a moment ago, weren't they still seeing Professor Flitwick suppressing Charles? How come after that flash of light, Professor Flitwick just stopped fighting? What exactly did Charles do? At this moment, Professor Flitwick and Charles had already performed the etiquette for the end of a duel. Professor Flitwick looked at Charles, filled with emotion. "To have researched the Lumos charm to this extent, you are truly the first person I have ever seen. Those 2 spells just now, did you create them from the Lumos charm? What are their names?" Charles nodded. "One is called the flash spell, and the other is called the laser spell." Professor Flitwick patted Charles' shoulder. "To have created 2 spells at this age, one of which is a powerful offensive spell, Charles, you are indeed the strongest genius I have ever seen." He paused, then said with great certainty, "Headmaster Dumbledore at your age was far inferior." As soon as these words came out, they were truly like a clap of thunder, leaving everyone watching with blank minds. Self-created spells? Aren't spells written in textbooks? They can be self-created. Some knowledgeable Ravenclaw students murmured. Of course spells can be self-created. For example, the most famous killing curse was created by the mysterious person. The creators of other spells can also be found. But what is certain is that creating spells is by no means easy. Even the seemingly most insignificant Lumos charm, its creator is listed in the history of magic because of this act. As soon as their words came out, everyone present felt their heads buzzing even more. So, just the 2 self-created spells Charles used today are enough for him to be recorded in the history of magic, and twice at that. Damn, is the gap between people this big? We're still learning the spells in textbooks, and Charles has already started creating spells. In addition, Professor Flitwick personally said that Charles' talent was the strongest he had ever seen, and even asserted that Dumbledore was far inferior to Charles back then. Such words also caused a shock in everyone present. Before, everyone was just guessing that perhaps Charles would be the strongest genius in the history of Hogwarts. But when comparing him to Headmaster Dumbledore, most people still felt that Dumbledore was the most talented. But now, Professor Flitwick saying this was undoubtedly much more credible, essentially settling the matter. Charles' talent indeed surpassed Dumbledore's, and he deserved the title of the strongest genius in the history of Hogwarts. At this moment, Professor Flitwick seemed to remember something and said to Charles, "Charles, your dueling skills are also quite good. You already have the qualifications to join the British Wizarding Duel Club." "Just right, as the honorary chairman of the club, I invite you to join." Charles was stunned for a moment, and readily accepted. The wizards in the duel club should all be relatively strong in one-on-one combat. Having a name here might also allow him to come into contact with some unique magic, so Charles naturally wouldn't refuse. Seeing Charles agree, Flitwick also smiled and applauded. "Then give yourself a nickname. It has to be a bit imposing, just like my nickname in the club is the King of Gale, because my spells are as swift and fierce as a gale. There is also a wizard who is good at using a wand in conjunction with a long sword, whose nickname is the King of Blades. How about you give yourself a similar one?" Charles pondered for a moment. He didn't want his nickname to reveal too much about himself. It would be best to make people focus on the aspects he had already shown and ignore the parts he had hidden. Immediately after, Charles said, "I'll keep a low profile. Just call me King of Lumos. Join me on Patreon if you want to request a novel, link in the description."
Hello everyone, this is Shadow. Due to copyright restrictions on YouTube, I can't publish many of the audiobooks you love. That's why I've created a special paid service where you can enjoy over 300 high-quality audiobooks from platforms like Webnovel, Pocket FM, Audible, Wuxia, and more. Each novel comes as a one-time purchase, no subscriptions, no hidden fees. After payment, you'll receive full access via Telegram, along with all future updates for that novel. You'll find a wide selection of your favorite genres and titles, always in premium audio quality. Check the full list of available novels in the description. DM me now to get your favorite stories in audiobook form and start listening today. Also, you can request any novel so I can turn into audiobooks. Check out our Patreon for more details.